let's get into it. Hello, I'm Bryan Ghoslin. Um, I put on these talks for the summer, and so that means I had about 3 months to plan for my talk, and I put it together in one day. So you're gonna see, what it means to really struggle while you're doing something. Now, quick side note, I did want to give a talk about my thesis work, but it's not quite done, and I don't think I'm in the clear to talk about it in detail yet, especially similar to what Isabel experienced. I can't be broadcasting any of that information. So let me pull up my screen. I believe you can all see it. You should all see it. Yes? Okay, cool. All right, yeah, so just like anyone else, stop me with questions. Ask questions at any time, but again, I'm just yelling at a camera right now, so let's make this feel human like. So it's okay to struggle. Everyone struggles. It's sometimes you reach a point in your work where you want to give up, and it's you shouldn't give up. Don't give up. Okay, we're jumping ahead already. Cool. So here's the table of contents that we're going to cover. What makes a Bryan? Some basic background about me. What are we doing here? What are we covering? Like, what are the topics that I'm hoping you'll take away from it? Story time with Bryan. That's everyone's favorite time. What have we learned today? So just a recap, making sure you get what I think is important, and then questions that hopefully don't begin with what. So let's get going. What makes a Bryan? Here's some fun facts about me. I was born March 22nd, 1995, and I don't know what I just did. Give me 1 second, you guys. I'm sorry about this. I want to pull something up, and it's not working. Anyways, if you have questions, I'm not going to see the chat, so someone just shout them out to me. Right, so born March 22nd, 1995. I've lived in La Crescenta my entire life, except for 4 years when I lived in Riverside for college. I'm an Eagle Scout. Very important note, my name is spelled with an A. Please get it right. Okay, so really though, my name is spelled with a Y. A more common spelling is with an I. I had someone who, I was at a doctor's office and the nurse came in and just casual conversation was like, oh, so your name is spelled with an A. And I'm just like, yeah, it is. And she's like, that's so unique. I've never seen that before. So there you go. Apparently Bryan with an A is unique. So get it right. Um, Other bit, I'm into sports. I played 8 years of, the local Little League baseball. I was terrible, so that didn't last long. And we don't talk much about that. Um, Here's my significant academic and work experience. I went to CV from 2009 to 2013. I was on the robotics team all 4 years. I was in Dr. Neat's engineering class all 4 years. I won the 2013 RShock Award. Did not have much competition that year, so that's not a surprise to anyone. In 2013 through 2017, I went to UC Riverside. I earned my Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering from there. Significant events, I was a co-founder of Aerospace Systems, which was mentioned in Jacob's talk, but I'll go over that a little bit today because it's important. Um, I'll come back to it though, because the next most important thing was I was a co-founder for a startup business. We were an automation startup. I'll get very into the details of this later on, but we were just, bunch of crazy guys that wanted to change the world with automation, and it did not go well. Then 2018 into currently, I'm in my last semester. I will be graduating soon. I'm working on my master's in mechanical engineering at CSUN. My thesis research is on the hybrid BCI robot, which I will be going in depth on that much later as well. Not much later, it's going to be a long talk. Back to aerospace systems. When you're in college, get involved with organizations as much as you can, but if you have the chance, try and start your own organization. It's an incredible experience, and you learn so much along the way. I was one of the last to be considered co-founder. I was brought into a group of about 7 students, and they were really led by one person whose name is Xavier Hernandez, and they were taking over an existing project, wanted to make it a steady organization that could fund itself because we were working through ASME before, and we were successful. We won the um, Executive Board of the Year award in our first year. They haven't done it since. The work we set forward that first year got them like a $10,000 grant almost the next year. They got lots of sponsorships. They're working well ahead of schedule of what we set forward. So it's really cool, really great experience. And it's significant because then it translates into my experience with the startup business, because Xavier Hernandez was our CEO and he was our driving force of the business. He was constantly he's an entrepreneur. He's going to go far in this world, but it's a big difference between starting a school organization and starting a business. And so that's part of the lessons learned that I won't get too much into unless you ask me. I'd be happy to talk about it, but we'll get to that later. All right, so what are we doing here today? Right, so the topic is it's okay to struggle, and it's important to admit and recognize that you're struggling. So one quick note before I forget, part of going last is I can kind of draw from talks that everyone else has done and really kind of highlight important parts that I thought was important. And from Amy's talk, we talked about burnout and knowing when it's okay to step away. And so I wanted to really cover that again. And it's important to recognize the signs of burnout. And so it's when work becomes increasingly stressful. It's when just even simple tasks that you could do before without question just become a burden, and just it doesn't feel like you can do it or even want to do it. You become cynical of your work conditions that never bothered you before. It can be something small like the AC just blows on you the wrong way, and it's never bothered you before, but now it just irritates you because it's constantly there. Or it could be a coworker who hums while working, um, or worse, it can feel like your coworkers are putting all of their work on you, which can very well happen. But when you're in at this point of being burnt out, it's likely not happening, and it just feels that way. It feels like everything is working against you. Um, Physical issues, you constantly have a headache, migraines, you feel stomach cramps, nauseous. Most important that I have personally dealt with is you feel emotionally drained, and every little thing outside of work just feels like it's becoming a chore. And so you could be looking forward to a new movie, a new video game that's coming out, but as soon as you have that game downloaded and installed, it feels like a job started up. And it's just, those are the signs. There's everything that made you happy before just doesn't click the same way. So how do you handle burnout? It's okay to admit you need a break. And I want to, quick disclaimer, I'm not a therapist. um, I've never actually been to a therapist, and I recommend you go to a therapist if you need to. I definitely need to go, and as soon as I can find one during this pandemic or after, I'm definitely going. But these are ways that I have found to be helpful, that really help me just reset my mind and get back into the mood to work. And so work on a creative hobby. That could be reading, writing, listening to music, playing music, watching movies, whatever. Work on a destructive hobby. Now, for me, that's video games, and I like to play just violent video games and just take out my frustrations on characters that aren't real. I like to play racing games and just crash into other cars. Um, and then this carries into the next one of working out. I'll go to batting cages, and yeah, I'm not great at baseball, but if it's such a great feeling of just being able to hit something so hard, and when you can hit baseballs that are just hurled at you, it's a great feeling and it really helps you de-stress. But working out in general is incredibly important. Your mental health is tied directly to your physical health. And the more you work out, the more energy physical energy you have, the more mental energy you have, and both are important. So take care of both. Restructure your schedule. I know this isn't always possible, especially when you're in school or if you're working with a business. There's certain deadlines and meetings you have to be at and follow, and just you're expected to be certain places. But in your free time and the time where you are working by yourself and just chugging away, restructure how you approach those times. Um, Everyone, especially us younger people, but everyone deals with short attention spans when working. And the ideal range of your focus is roughly 25 to 30 minutes. If you try and force yourself to work longer, you can, but you're likely to not be as efficient, just have worse results produced, um, and ultimately affects your health. And so when you can, take short breaks, no longer than 5 minutes, but you hit that 25 minutes, take a quick break, check out your phone, look at notifications that have popped up, drop down, do 10 push-ups, something. But then you have to be strict, and you have to, as soon as those 5 minutes are up, you're back to work, because you don't want to be wasting time anymore. Yeah, and then finally, go see a therapist. All right, it's story time. I'm going to cover four. I'm going to talk about four aspects that have been a part of my life since the start of 2018, and talk about how much effort I've been able to put into them, especially when they all stack up on top of each other. And then afterwards, I'll go into detail on two of those. But it starts off with grad school. And I got into grad school in 2018. I didn't plan on going to grad school right away after college or undergrad. I wanted to work for at least a couple of years, just get some industry experience, figure out exactly what I want to go for my master's and study. But after a year out of college, I wasn't getting hired, and it was recommended to me that just go to grad school. My GPA out of college wasn't great, so go to grad school, get a better GPA, and I'll have more success. So that's what I did. I was excited to do it, and yeah, all my effort and enthusiasm was put into it. Then came the business, and so the business officially started in 2019. But we were working as a team as far back as 2017. And I became really involved around 2018 after my grad school started. And as you can see, I was putting a lot of effort into both of them, and I was able to balance it really well. I wasn't putting all my effort into either one, so it wasn't top work, but I was surviving. Then I got to 2019, and the business became official, and I started my research. And as you can see, it's just I couldn't properly prioritize my efforts. I was and the business and the research would fluctuate between which got more attention. My grades didn't slip, but they certainly weren't as good as they could have been. I wasn't making progress on my research as fast as I should have been, and the business, we'll get into some of the issues there. Finally, when you add in your personal life, trying to balance everything just becomes impossible. I was trying to date at the time. I was mentoring 589 at the time. And, you know, I have no regrets about anything I've done here, but it certainly drained me. And there's jokes from the class of 2019, I believe it was, that I had a thinking stool, like the one there. I would just sit on the field during meetings and just kind of just be thinking. And really, that was just a chance for me to take a break and just kind of like process like everything I've done in the day, and just like what have I got to do still, and it was just overwhelming information and trying to be there for the students. So it was a tough time for me. I probably should have stepped away from something, but I didn't. So oh well. Right, so let's talk about the business. So our business is called ARCS. It was an acronym that stood for Autonomous Robotic Kinematic Systems. It was an incredibly stupid name, but that's what we went with because we had no other ideas. like I said, we started in 2017, and we just constantly had like different ideas of what we wanted to do with our business. And so we started off with generative design for 3D manufacturing. I don't know how, but we got an opportunity through Corsair. I don't know if you guys know them. They do computers and stuff like that, where we were to design a new computer tower for them that could be 3D printed and I believe sold as a pre-built computer. And so that was a fun experience. If you don't know what generative design is, it's where you take a design and you run it through a CAD software. In this case, it was Autodesk, Autodesk Inventor, I believe, and it will it will study the design and say, okay, this is where we can reduce material and have it still be just as strong. It creates some really cool designs, and it's really interesting if you're getting into design work, and this is really for the college people right now, but I recommend checking it out if that's what you're into. Um, we never finished that project. We got away from it because Xavier got into his senior design project. And so at Riverside, he went up and was saying, hey, I'm working on this project. I would love to do it for my senior design project. And they just instantly, they were just like, no, you can't do that. That's not a good project. So in this time, Xavier had learned a lot about 3D print farms. And the 3D printer we were using in the business was a Prusa printer. And so he had been in contact with them and learned about their farm, learned what they did, and how there's 500 printers they have in their farm right now. And really all they do is print parts for new printers to sell. And so basically 8 hours a day, these printers are just printing away, and employees have to go and check on them every once in a while, clear the parts, start a new one. It's an exhaustive process. And so what we said was that we could automate that process, have a robot come, clean off the print, start a new one, and just save time for the employees to do other things. So it was about this point that I stepped away for a bit, just for different reasons. I came back when this project was finishing up. It really didn't turn into anything. We finished it. Prusa wasn't interested anymore. We weren't interested anymore. And we moved on to the last point, which was automation of third-party fulfillment centers. And so if you know what Amazon warehouses are like and just how crazy they can be, they have these robots that will move entire shelves from point A to point B, and the employees pick off the parts from the shelves, the robots move them back, then the parts go in the box is put on another robot takes it to a different part of the shipping center, and it's an entire very complex maze and system. What we wanted to do was something similar, but make it cheap and accessible for these smaller warehouses across America. There's and especially here in Southern California, we were in the right market for it, because I forget the numbers right now, so I'm going to make some up. But it's if there's 18,000 warehouses in America, there's 14,000 of them here in Southern California. And so we knew we had the right market and we could really break into it if we had the right design. There were some companies already doing similar stuff, so we just had to come up with something that was unique, and we thought we had that idea. So we applied, became an official business so that we could focus on getting funding and grants necessary to make the design possible. And so yeah, so it led to a very interesting year. And some lessons learned, it's hard to achieve a common goal when ambitions don't align. We had a great team. I loved everyone on the team that we worked with. There's 5 of us initially, really smart people. We all complemented each other well. We added some extra people on. Joey Brown actually helped us out for a bit. Um, but when it came down to it, Xavier was the only one with a dream of running a business. Everyone else, we all we were all excited by the prospect of it being business, but we all were treating it as an engineering project where we could practice and hone our skills and do new things. And so when Xavier is just marching down a path, setting goal after goal, saying, hey, we need to have a prototype that can do this by this point so we can get funding to do this. You know, he makes very good points. We need extra funding to do what we can do. But on the engineering side, we're slowly just saying, hey, let's try something new. Let's do this instead. Let's try this. Let's see how it works. And so we weren't matching up there. And then also another big issue, which should have stood out to me much earlier, but I didn't really until we fell apart and I could kind of look back and see what the issues were. We all had different personal goals. And so, yeah, Xavier wanted a business. Our chief technical officer, he had a family, and so he was working a full-time job while doing this and wasn't able to give his full attention to it. I was in grad school. Someone else was trying to get into grad school. Others were in school. And so it was just, everyone just had different extra responsibilities, and they weren't putting the required emphasis into this work. And so it, you know, and I could go on for a long time about these issues, but I won't do it too much. You know, it was challenging. It was frustrating. And for me, at least, you know, I told everyone that I was going to be in grad school, and I wanted to make sure with them, it's like, hey, I'm doing my research. Is this going to be okay with you guys? I'm not going to be able to put as much effort into it. Everyone said, yeah, that's fine. But then kind of just turned around and just did their own thing anyways, doing other stuff. And for personal lessons I took out of it, you know, I was obviously balancing too much, and I'll get that into that more when I touch on my research. But there were so many times where someone would ask something of me, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll try and get it done by this date, and I'll try and do this, I'll try and do that, and it just, I really kind of set myself up to fail on that regard, and because I wasn't taking it as serious as I should have been. And again, I'll get into it later. It's hard to take two very major things serious at the same time. So real quick, I didn't talk much about our design because it really didn't get very far. But we do have a video of what our prototype looked like. This was before it was autonomous, so you know, we're just driving it with a cell phone right now. The work done by companies that are actually selling this type of hardware to warehouses, they're all differential drive robots, and very, very well made, very, very impressive work. But we wanted to stand out, so we went with the mechanism wheels just so that we could have the omnidirectional drive, be able to avoid obstacles with ease, and just keep things as safe and as impressive as possible. You know, that's a Kinect's camera there. Yeah, most of the stuff you see was, you know, like Andy Mark type stuff, so shout out to them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions about the business before I move on? I know I kind of kept things somewhat vague, but I'd be happy to answer anything right now.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you said that at some point it fell apart, but if it hadn't fallen apart, do you think you would have continued working with that, or do you think you would have at some point stepped away?
That's a good question. I would have probably stepped away just based off how this year went with the pandemic and everything. I don't think we would have survived the pandemic at all. But regarding my research in grad school, you know, I was already falling behind, and I was getting to a point where I knew I'd have to choose one over the other. And considering I put more money into my grad school and education, I definitely would have chosen that. Um, we, yeah, kind of came as a surprise when we fell apart, just because out of nowhere, Xavier just hit all of us up and he's like, I'm done, I'm quitting. And he had his reasons, they're all valid reasons. It just kind of blindsided all of us. And so if we hadn't fallen apart when we did, I think we would have fallen apart at some point this year. But to really answer your question, if we hadn't fallen apart at all, I don't think I would still be with this. So any other questions?
Yeah, besides drive around and see with the Kinect, what were these robots going to do?
Right, okay, so basically in warehouses that are just, they'll ship anything, right? You know, these warehouses will act as a shipment center for companies that aren't necessarily big enough to interact with Amazon. And so they'll ship their goods to this place. The place will then collect orders and they'll be shipped out somewhere else. And so what people do is they push around carts just like this, and just collect orders. They'll get tickets and it's like, okay, I need to go get this from this aisle, I need to get this from this other aisle. And they're going, marching back and forth, just wasting time collecting everything. And so part of our overall solution was this robot, or a fleet of these robots, could be in a warehouse of any size, and the robots will be the ones getting the orders, and they'll drive to different aisles where they know those products are, and then an employee will load the product on, push a button that says, hey, this product is on here, and then the cart will drive to the next item. And once the cart is full with the shipment or multiple shipments even, then it will go to a delivery station where it'll be unloaded and then can be boxed up by employees while it goes off and gets more orders. And so that was the ultimate goal of this project. It would have had sensors on all sides, so 4 cameras. We weren't going to use the Kinect for the actual system. That was just for our testing purposes. And ultimately, real product, we wouldn't have used this type of cart. We chose this cart because it would make it easy for us to do a very simple first product. Because so many warehouses use something like this, we could go in and install our system on it right away and start selling and making money that way as we continue to develop our product further into an actual holistic system that we ship off to different warehouses and set up for them.
Cool. Did you guys look at all into like stocking shelves for like grocery stores or things like that as well, like retail space in addition to the warehouses? I know if it's in like a warehouse, like you can be a little bit less safe because we all know how much Amazon cares about the people who work there. But like in like a Whole Foods or like a Walmart, did you guys look at all into that kind of thing?
We hadn't considered that. We had considered the opposite of coming up with a robot that could pick the parts from the shelves in a warehouse. And that way you take out, you cut out employees altogether, or not altogether, but you can reduce the number of employees drastically. That technology we didn't feel was ready at this point in time. I know there's companies that are working on similar things, but it's just, we're still quite a few years from that. I'd probably say like 3 years at most. Regarding actual stores and like grocery stores or retail or anything, I think we'll probably be even further, and that's just because the robots would have to interact with humans. And so that's just, it's one thing to be an employee trained to interact with a robot, but to be a customer, in a world where the customer is always right, which isn't true, yeah, that's a dangerous setup.
Cool, thanks.
No problem. I'm going to move on. If you have more questions about this, you can ask me at the end. So for my thesis research, it is a hybrid BCI omnidirectional robot. I'm going to answer these 3 questions because I'm sure a lot of you have these questions. BCI, what is BCI? It is a brain-computer interface, and it is how you can interact with a computer, different software, even other hardware with your brain. And what is most common is you take EEG scans. But Sam's talked about this, Isabel's talked about this if you've seen their talks. EEG is the most non-invasive, but there are other more accurate ways you can measure brain waves. And then the system it runs through a machine learning controller. I'm terrible at explaining this, but I'm going to get better because I'm going to have to defend this soon. But yeah, it's a really complicated system, but it's really cool, and it's really a way for like paraplegic patients to use a computer they can move a mouse around, they can type with it. With this specific project, it's a robot that's moving around, and that's what I'm working on. But there's also an arm with a manipulator on it, and it's like two parallel projects. But it's a way for someone to have like an in-house assistant without needing a nurse there 24/7. That's kind of the clinical goal of this research. What does omnidirectional mean? I assume most of you know since you are in robotics or are interested in robotics, but it is when it can move in basically any direction. It has 3 degrees of freedom. It's like the mechanism wheels, omni wheels. There's rollers on the wheels that allow it to slide even though the velocity is going in a different direction. Yeah. So then what is a hybrid BCI omnidirectional robot? I guess I already explained that. Basically, the end goal of this project is a user wears the EEG cap. It's taking live feedings of their brain, and they're doing different signals, giving different signals. We're measuring the motor imagery. And so if they squeeze the right hand, it'll tell the robot to do one thing. Squeeze the left hand, something else. Curling your toes on either foot will give different commands. We wanted to get to the point where it's like with the arm, the guy wanted to be able to like just move your arm as you would, and the robot arm would respond. Thanks to the pandemic, he never got that far. But yeah, basically the hybrid aspect is you're driving it with your brain, but there's also autonomous control. And so because the feedback may not be immediate, if your robot's about to crash into something, it won't. And you don't have to panic and give a command to try and stop that. I don't think I can get into too many of the specifics of my solution yet, but I do plan on giving a talk later this year or early next year, sometime during the season, that will actually go through this in detail. I really want to explain it to you guys, and so hopefully we can do that sometime soon. But on the theme of this topic, it was a year of issues. And so technically it's been 2 years. The first year I was very much involved with business. I was only really doing basic background research, reading about BCI systems, reading about omnidirectional robots, how to control them, this and that. But most of my priority was on the business. Then once I really got into working on the robot, setting it up, learning BCI, how to record EEG readings and process through everything, it became very difficult to balance my work. And then this year has been an entirely different issue with the pandemic, and it's been challenging working from home. My work is much slower than it was even last year, trying to balance 2 different projects, but I'm getting done. I'm starting my testing for my work this week. And funny thing is, I don't have my robot with me. I'm doing all my work in a simulation. The robot is on CSUN's campus in my lab. I'm not allowed to go get it yet. I'm just waiting for that final, it's like, hey, you can go get it. I'll have to assemble some parts and then I can test it. So I'm not looking forward to that. But yet, quickly here are the lessons that I've learned from this is to set appropriate goals. When you have a project where you are basically planning everything out, it can be hard to set those appropriate goals. You have one deadline, which is, by the end of 2020, I have to do my defense. And so to reach major milestone necessary within this project, I have to keep myself honest with my goals and say like, hey, yeah, I can get this done by this time. I can get this next part done by this time. But if I'm being over ambitious with what I'm saying is possible, then these goals will start stacking up and my work slows down and I fall behind. And so it's not good. Balancing priorities, this really relates to the business and just how if I had stuck with either one of these, they would have benefited my future career in different ways and both positive, but I certainly needed to recognize that one was better than the other, and that was the research, that is grad school, and I should have put more focus into this throughout the entire project. And that also kind of ties back into the whole, trying thing. I'd say I'd try and do something. I'd say and try and be done with something at this point, and it wasn't working out. And then yeah, learning how to appropriately handle working during a pandemic. I'm sure everyone here has learned by now, it's incredibly hard to do work when you're stuck within one spot. I don't have the freedom to separate my schoolwork and my free time. Like I have one desk. I can't go anywhere else in my house and do that. So it's hard to balance and focus on what was necessary. But then also didn't have the same resources I would have had on campus. If there was papers I needed to read, I had to, use my remote access just to get access to them. I couldn't rely on my lab mates for information, like immediate information. We had to schedule Zoom meetings. We had to, wait for responses to emails or texts, and it became messy. But again, we're finally all finishing up, and it's pretty cool. So here's a picture. This is what the robot roughly looks like. This is a model in our simulation environment. I I can't record anything moving wise, but it does move. This is a robot. I always forget how big it is. It's like 300 millimeters diameter. No, that doesn't sound right. I don't know how big it is, so I can't really give you a reference. I'm sorry, guys. Well, I guess I can. It's like this hand is roughly as big as my hand in the real world. And so that's to scale. So that should give you a rough idea of how big it is. These cylinders, those are Omni wheels. What's cool about this simulation is you don't have to have them modeled exactly right. It will work as expected. This is our camera, some sensors we have throughout it. Yeah, so that's that. Does anyone have any questions? I'll explain as best I can. Otherwise, we'll head towards the wrap up in our formal question section.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I I put it in the chat, but you probably didn't see it. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on Neuralink, what Elon Musk just came out with.
I think it's really cool. It's really fascinating what he's trying to do, but it's also really scary. You talk about, everyone complains about surveillance and just how companies can track every little thing we do. And it's like, oh, don't use TikTok, but every other US company is tracking stuff through your phone anyways. And that type of technology, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to it anytime soon. Again, it's really fascinating, really cool, the prospects, but I'm wary about first models. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a Black Mirror episode.
oh,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move on to what have we learned. So 5 key takeaways I hope you got out of this. Burnout is natural. Everyone deals with it, so don't be afraid about it. Take time for yourself, and ask for help. Don't overload. Prioritize what's most important for your future success. Oftentimes, there's something that will have immediate success, and you want to go for that, but you really got to consider, like, paying for your education sucks, but it's going to help you out farther along instead of possibly something that might get you money soon. So take that into account. Don't try. I talked about like always saying like, I'll try and do this, I'll try and do that. And I heard this great quote just this last week from a YouTube video. I want to give credit, but I totally forget who it was. Try is the word we use for failure in advance. When you say you'll try to do something, you may very well try and do it and put effort into doing it. But saying you'll try something is almost giving yourself the okay to fail. And so if you learn something new that you could apply to your life, it's better to say like, oh, I'm going to do this, because you still may fail, but you'll get, there'll be better lessons out of it. It's always good to fail. It's always good to learn from your failures, just like Sam's talk was all about. But, if you're not going to 100% commit to doing something, you're not going to actually learn from those failures. And so that's important. Have an outlet, like I said, creative outlet, destructive outlet, work out, do anything else you can. And then the fifth, most important, is my favorite Ron Swanson quote: never half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing. Best advice I've gotten from a TV show. I don't follow enough, but it's something to always remember. So, any questions about anything? I'm actually going to stop sharing so I can. Okay, here's our questions. Is there anything I missed? So Eric, you asked about the wheel layout. I'm guessing you're talking about the.
Yeah, I was just curious about why you guys had 3. Like you went for a.
Got it. So that's one thing about omnidirectional wheels and robots is you only need 3 wheels to have total control, and because you have it's like, so say an omnidirectional wheel in this case, so there's called the Swiss wheel, and with the 90-degree rollers. And so let's say my hand is the wheel, and it can slide back and forth or roll this way. So when you have 3 at a triangle like that, you can have 2 powered spinning this way. So the robot's going to drive like into my computer, and that back wheel doesn't stop it at all because the rollers can go. And so you only need the 3 to have free movements.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, Brendan and Thomas, as Yoda said, do or do not, there's no try.
Ryan, I have a question for you.
Yes, hello.
That's usually the question that Mrs. Martos was asked, I believe, if she was here. What skills did you take out of 589 that helped you prepare for all of this? Both technical and the non-technical ones, because the technical one seems pretty straightforward, but also like non-technical, soft skills.
Yeah, so I'll start technical because it is definitely straightforward. The 6-week season, it's such a compressed engineering experience, but it can be applied to everything in the world. And and this ties into setting realistic goals. Don't push yourself too much, but know that you can work at a fast pace. And if you set smaller goals like we have in the season, you can get more work done. And so that's probably the biggest thing on the technical side that I have applied in all of my engineering experience. I'm an engineer because I haven't actually worked a real job, but yeah, it's like if you can break it down into the major components of a project, you can always break it down further. And even when it seems like you don't have enough time, you always have the time to get that work done. Non-technical side, I guess, is just, you know, communication and leadership skills that I got from the team. You know, learning to work with others and learning how to approach different situations, and you know, if there's issues with communication, how can you handle that? And so that's kind of what I've taken from 589.
So when working on your robot designs, what part of working on it was harder, kind of designing and figuring out what the product space it was going to be, or prototyping and trying to verify that things were working the way you wanted it to in a practical level?
Yes, I think both are equally challenging, and they really feed into each other. You know, prototyping is important, and that will really show you how things will work as you expect it, but then you still have to consider the entire system. And if you have to do something crazy to get this idea to work, it's not going to implement well with other parts of your system. And that's, it's challenging, you know. It's something that the team deals with every year. It's like you want to do such elaborate ideas, but then you're cramming week 6 to get it to fit together. And that happens, at least in my experience, that happens in the real world. You know, um, you have an idea that in your head works perfectly, and then you have to deal with making it work. Um, in fact, like so my research project, right? You know, it's been broken into 2 projects, but the original person who was working on the arm and set up this project, the arm just wouldn't stay up, and so they had to design this counterweight that's like hung off the back of the robot, and it was hideous. It didn't allow space for much movement or anything else. And so it's like, you know, it's good to prototype and know how things are going to work so that you can properly design ahead. And I think that's, yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Bryan, how did you figure out your priorities? Like how you rank your priorities?
That's a good question. And I can't even say I have it right as of now. You know I really enjoy engineering, and obviously, you know, I've been studying it, and that's what I want to do for my career. But one challenge with grad school is, you know, I didn't know specifically what field I wanted to get into. I still could have gone with aerospace. I still could have gone um, with something not in the field of controls or automation, and you know, it's, so you have to find what you're really passionate about, and that will really help your priorities. In regards to my experiences between the business and school, you know, I started with the business not thinking I would stick with it forever, but as it became more of a real thing, I I'll admit that I've thought about dropping out of college, or dropping out of grad school at certain points, because I saw this as an opportunity to stick with something that's going to work. And I know, you know, startups are a huge risk, and that was really probably not the right thinking to ever have, but it's certainly something that crossed my mind multiple times. But I always stuck with the school, um, not just because I put money and time into it already, but because I knew that even if I could have balanced it throughout, you know, having my education is so important, and getting that degree would have opened so many more doors beyond just the startup. And so that's you know, think about your long-term future. You may not know specifically what you want to do, but anything that really drives in experiences that can benefit you down the road, that's where your priorities should lay. Does that answer your question? Are there
Okay,
any
Brian,
other?
I have another question.
Oh yes, hello.
So I ask this like almost all the time. There are a few people here in this chat who are about to go to college or just started going to college. From your college experience, previous and current, what's the thing you regret the most, or you would like to change the most, and what's the thing you're most proud of, or you have made like the best decision on, I guess?
My biggest regret in college was not getting involved in research. Going to a UC, any UC, you have great opportunities to do research. And I don't know why I never got into it, but I really wish I could go back and do it. It doesn't, that's one of those things that doesn't matter what you get into, any topic, you're going to get great experience that will benefit you in the long run. And again, that it could be something as simple as like, oh, I don't like working with fluids or something. That tells you so much as an engineer. And so then, then you can find another professor, do research with them, try something else. And this isn't just for engineering. This is for any field you can go into. Do research. It will look good on your resume. It will look good in your brain. Yeah, that's my biggest regret. What was the second part of your question?
Like the best decision you made.
Best decision? Okay. Probably just to go to college in general. I really, in high school, I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. And I'll admit that I felt almost forced into it. But having gone through it and being able to look back at everything I experienced, it's, nothing stands out except the entire experience itself. There's so many good and bad parts that, if I may have gone some if I went to a community college or just, started working somewhere doing a trade tech, but, going to college, it's something entirely different. And I'm not saying to everyone listening that you need to go to college. I know it's not for everyone, and so do what feels right for you. But yeah, just the entire college experience for me was, memorable and the best part, I'd say. All right. If there's more questions, we can definitely get to it, but I want to give a moment for any student that wants to talk about the food drive coming up and give details about that. Please don't be shy.
Okay. So, Jaya, if you want to say anything, go ahead. But so we're going to be doing another food drive, almost exactly like last time on September 12th. The same hours, 10 to 2. You can drive through at any time, and we will take the food out from your car for you. You don't need to be in contact with anyone. Last time, I'm not sure if all of you heard, but we got over 2,000 pounds worth of food, plus I think a couple hundred from Megget that we recently picked up. And we're hoping to get close to that again, if not top it, because that was really incredible. And we got so much more than than expected. It was great. It was awesome. And thank you to all the alumni who donated, because seeing Bryan pull up with a giant amount of food was pretty great. But yeah, it was also just fun seeing the faces of everybody at the Bailey Foundation when we pulled up with over 2,000 pounds of food and spent about 20 minutes just offloading it, and that the amount that we gave them will supply them for a certain number of weeks, and they're safe, but we just want to keep giving to them, making sure that they're well stocked, because they were, I think, 2 weeks away from running out when we donated. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Great work. I guess we challenged the Science Academy to try and raise the same amount. Were they successful?
Yes, well, okay, so I'm president of the Science Academy, and
Oh.
so basically the school said that we're not allowed to hold it at CV. Robotics has a monopoly on that,
Wow.
but we're trying to hold it at the church, actually, where the Bailey Center is located. So that should be like a week after 589's next food drive. So hopefully we can get some sort of competition or chain going back and forth just to kind of, help out around the community.
Yeah, that's incredible. Good job, you guys. Okay, any last questions before I wrap this up? No? All right, well, thank you for everyone who showed up and listened to me ramble on about my struggles. I hope it helped you to learn something new. I'm always open. You can reach out to me. I'm on the Discord almost every day. Shouldn't be, but I am. And again, you probably have my email somewhere, so just don't be afraid to reach out. If you have any extra questions, just shoot them my way. I'll be happy to answer them, help you out with any engineering related questions you may have or whatever. Sorry.